On yet? Oh, it is on. It is on. All right. I'm going to give everyone who wants to leave 15 seconds before I start talking. Get out. No, I'm just kidding. You guys should stay. This is going to be really fun. I think I have some fun stuff to tell you. This thing's like right in my field of view. All right. So today we're going to talk about dApps, but more importantly, we're going to talk about Dapp users, because that's what we all really need in this space, is more users. My name's Ryan Angilly. I'm a co-founder of a company called Blocknative. You probably haven't heard of us. We got good old-fashioned fiat funded about a year ago, and we haven't exactly been in stealth, but we haven't had much to say until now. We're using ETH Denver as a bit of a jumping off point for our first product. We build Dapp usability stuff so that you don't have to. The goal of this workshop is to help make your dApps at least a little bit more usable. Now, I'm not going to show Blocknative too much until the end, but I do want to give you a little bit of context for our history, because I think it's really helpful when someone's speaking to know where they're coming from, so you can decide for yourself whether or not to ignore me. About a year and a half ago, we started building blockchain games. So we wanted to build an ERC 721 trading game where you could trade cards, complete sets, win prizes. And don't worry too much if you can't see the details on this right-hand side. It's not super important. The details aren't important. But what is important is that when we did some gameplay sessions, we got like 12 people on a Google Hangout. It was abysmal. People were kind of chatting out of band, asking, hey, did you send the card? Did you complete the set? Like, what's going on? And it just was really hard. So we added a bunch more features, did it again, same result. People just weren't having fun. So we talked about this for about a week. And then we added this new thing on the right-hand side. And again, don't worry that you can't read it. All that's important there is that it was this omnipresent sidebar in the Dapp. And what that did was just give an event stream for like what was happening on the chain. But it would do it in plain English. So it would say something like, Neil is sending the Vitalik card to Ryan, right? That's a pending transaction, right? Neil, successfully sent the Vitalik card to Ryan, right? And we just added this simple thing, and we did another gameplay session. And the game, it was night and day, right? The game was really fun to play. So the light bulb went off. I'm 36. Okay, I'm ancient in this room, and my two co-founders are in their 40s. And we remember this game, this story from the early 90s, right? We remember in the early 90s when product companies were building products, then they'd have to stop, build a whole bunch of infrastructure, because Stripe wasn't there. All these companies weren't there to support them. And the only companies that came out of that alive were the companies that actually pivoted to selling that infrastructure. And what we realized is that usability, this isn't the case in kind of Web 2, but for dApps, usability can be thought of as an infrastructure layer, right? We're all building the same stuff, right? So we thought about this for a better part of a year, really diving in to figure out kind of where in the space we could make a contribution, kind of put our flag in the sand, and that's Blocknative, right? So I'm gonna tell you about what we've learned about usability over the past year, and I want to give you 4 key takeaways for this talk. One is I want you to have a better appreciation for how hard your job is. This might sound weird, but it'll make sense later. I want you to be able to think about usability in a more structured way. I want to give you a tactical usability checklist. And then we're going to do some pattern walkthroughs if there's time, kind of showing you some good patterns of usability that we found in our research. So your job's really hard. I think anyone building dApps knows, that your job's really hard, and I don't think anything I'm about to say is going to be something that you didn't already know, but I want to like surface it up so that you think about it, right? Because it is a big deal. Web 2.0 people go out and they build a product, right? The people that use that product, they know what emails are, they know what passwords are, they know what password resets are and credit cards and CVVs, they know these things, right? Our users don't know what private keys are, they don't know what all these weird terms are. And in addition to that kind of cultural leap that they have to make, you also have to build all of your onboarding, right? Our users in the right browser, using MetaMask, on the right network. You have to build transaction notification, right? Tell them when transactions are pending, when they're successful. You have to do a lot of, relatively common sense parsing of MetaMask errors to explain to users what's happening. You have to tell them if the network's congested, if Ethereum's even like running at a good speed right now. You can do some gas estimation stuff. And then you can also do what we've started to call transaction support, and it's just like some good practices that we found, like if a user tries to do a transaction twice in a row, warn them that they probably need to confirm the first one first, right? Things like that. So your job is really hard. The next thing that I want to kind of give you is a way to think about usability in a more structured way. If you ask 100 people to talk about blockchain usability, you're going to get a ton of different anecdotes back at you, right? Because usability is the most overloaded term in blockchain. Decentralization is the most incorrectly used word in blockchain, but usability is the most overloaded one. It applies to so many different areas. So I started thinking about how to present this, and when I really dove into building this usability hierarchy, I realized it wasn't really possible because there's not really a hierarchy in the same way that you'd have like an OSI model for network architectures. But I'm going to do it anyway because I think you'll remember it better as like a meme. So I'm going to call it a hierarchy, but then just cross it out so you know that I'm not actually saying this is a direct analog. But to give you some ideas of what I'm talking about, when you ask people about usability, you're going to hear, hey, it's really hard to operate a node, right? So it's protocol operator usability. You're going to hear, hey, it's really hard to convey to people how congested the network is, right? There's network usability issues. You're going to hear, last year at ETH Denver, Poly was giving out these little paper wallets with 250 Poly, right? So you can have a paper wallet, you can have a Ledger USB stick wallet, and you can have MetaMask, which is a piece of software that you install into a browser. And we call all those things wallets. And we expect users to understand that, right? It's very just confusing from a nomenclature perspective. There's a funding usability issue. It's hard to get your first bit of Ether, right? And if someone just sends you tokens and you have no Ether and you don't know that you need to have Ether to send that token somewhere else, right? It's confusing. There's security usability. People don't understand that when a window pops up saying, MetaMask wants to connect to your wallet, people might worry that that app's going to take all your ETH, right? This sounds crazy to us, but this is not crazy to, kind of the goal of everyone using these dApps, right? And there's smart contract usability. The fact that we call these things smart contract is very confusing to people. And the fact that they now are calling each other, right? You have dApps calling DEXs, calling all these other things is an issue. And then at the top here, I have as a separate thing, Dapp usability, right? And the thing that I want to really highlight here is that even in this faux hierarchy, that's really not the case, because it's not really a hierarchy where you just kind of go down through layers of the stack. Your Dapp is going to, depending on what it does, selectively expose users directly to different usability issues in all these different areas, right? And now, the reason that I'm really diving into this, and the reason that I want you to be able to think about this stuff, is that I feel like one of the most important things for a product manager is to actively know what things you're not doing, right? So it's really easy to want to go build something, write down all the features and go build it, right? But the really good product managers, they build this whole landscape of what could be built, and then they just pick a few things to build. And what I want you to be able to think about coming out of this talk is thinking about usability and understanding that there are some things that you should deal with because they're very connected to what your Dapp's doing, and there are some things that are just the reality of the world, and you shouldn't burn energy trying to boil the ocean right now, right? So, how are we doing on time here? I'm going a little fast. This is the first time I've given this talk, and I have a couple extra minutes. Any questions now? Any feedback? Any just thoughts in general on what I just said? It's fine if not, you can find me later. But wanted to give you the opportunity. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, when I refer to Dapp usability, am I just talking about the front end? Yeah, I'm talking about the thing that the end user uses, right? What their experience is, the pixels they see, kind of the information that those can convey to them. Yeah, yeah, cool. All right, anything else? Okay, cool. So, did a little Googling before this talk, and I Googled Dapp usability checklist, and I couldn't find anything, and I thought, that could be a useful thing. So we built one at Blocknative, and so it's a Github repository. This link is very easily findable. If you just go to blocknative.com, you click around and you'll figure it out. But it's just a one markdown file, one file repository, and it just has a checklist of things grouped together in various ways that you can just think about. It's not meant to be prescriptive. It's not something where we're saying you must do these things if you're building a Dapp. It's certainly not exhaustive. So we're excited to get people to comment on this thing, send us pull requests. We'd like to actually build this into a community thing. Where you can be at a hackathon and you can be like, okay, cool, what things do we want to do, what things don't we want to do? Or you can be in a product planning meeting and you can actually really kind of attack this thing. I think it could help a lot. Okay, So now I want to spend a little bit of time just kind of walking through. We came across some really good products over the year that we were like looking into Dapp usability, and one of them is Funfair. Now Funfair is like a gambling site, and it's like part on-chain, part off-chain. We're not affiliated with them at all. I'm not shilling for them. They don't even know this is like in the talk, but they've done a really good job at building out some custom stuff around all these usability things that I'm talking about, or on the Dapp usability stuff. So first thing I did is, when you come to Funfair and Safari, they have this entire like fully dedicated page wizard experience that like walks you through, right? Installing the right browser, installing MetaMask. It walks you through like authorizing MetaMask. It walks you through making sure you're on the right network. It makes sure that you have the funds that you need to play. So it actually will make sure that you have both RinkB ETH, because it's like a RinkB testnet app, and have some of their token, which is called Test Fun. And I'm only showing this because I think it's interesting to realize that these people, like this is a full-blown product endeavor to build this thing, right? It's not just a couple of like JavaScript alerts, and it works. Like they have a lot of users on this stuff, right? Relatively speaking, of course, but it works. And so going forward, they've really, I feel like they've knocked this out of the park. So this is what happens before you actually submit a transaction, right? It's all very plain English, right? How much test fund would you like to play with? How quickly would you like to start playing? Slow, medium, fast, right? They're not talking about gas price. They're not talking about how, they're not talking about blocks or anything. The only place they mention anything blockchainy is when they mention the GUI down here. But I think it's really important, and it's easy to overlook how I think someone really went out of their way to figure out like how to do this in plain English. And I think that's something that a lot of Dapp teams can forget about in the moment. They'll throw in some very common kind of like hacker nomenclature in a place where there really should be more kind of like soft language, right? So great job here. When you submit a transaction and the MetaMask window pops up, they actually keep a modal on the screen and they tell you to go look for it, right? And if you don't confirm or reject fast enough, this little thing starts floating in the top right corner of the screen, like pointing at the MetaMask icon, right? And so again, like they just really have like gone out of their way to build this whole thing. And then lastly, when the transaction's pending, the transaction's not pending, they are setting up your game on the blockchain, right? And that little pink arc that looks like it's broken is like a spinner that goes in a circle, right? So again, just some really great examples of some patterns that I think are worth knowing about. Now, CryptoKitties takes a slightly different tack, where they just have a series of modals which work fairly well. They don't have like a big wizard where you kind of know where your state is in the wizard. But these modals that pop up, if you come to, on Safari to CryptoKitties, you get this modal saying switch browsers. Once you switch browsers, it says install MetaMask, and they have a bunch of the other kind of standard stuff. But I couldn't resist doing it. They're not perfect, right? So impossible to read, but under the orange button on the right bottom, there's an error message in pink, and it says, oops, looks like this transaction is invalid. What actually happened here was I went up to MetaMask and I switched networks over to Coven, and then I clicked buy now. And so, like not even CryptoKitties, like CryptoKitties decided that was so much of an edge case that they weren't going to deal with like warning people to switch networks back, right? And so it's just an example of, maybe it was an oversight. I like to think that they did it on purpose just because they didn't feel like building it because they're pretty sharp over there. But just an example of how easy it is for things to kind of slip through the cracks, and why I think this should be like a layer of infrastructure that's just kind of common across all dApps, right? Just a little bit. So as I said, like I'm from a company called Blocknative, and we built this thing that with just a few lines of code, which I'm not going to get into, it'll give you like one-line onboarding, right? So you call line 8 once you do all the other stuff, and that'll make sure that the user is completely onboarded into like the network that you want, right? I will share these slides later too if you want. What'll happen is we will actually pop up some UIs to like walk them through the whole process, right, from like soup to nuts, and then we will return success once they're like the user is on the right network, has ETH if you want them to, etc. This is what it looks like. I think my night mode just kicked on. 1 second here. that's a lot better. That was probably kicked on a while ago, didn't it? This is what it looks like. Hard to tell what's going on here because of the resolution, but the left side are 2 screens that pop up to onboard users. The bottom right-hand corner is a set of little toaster notifications that we will actually throw onto the screen on your behalf when transactions are running around. And you get all this with a very, very lightweight integration. It's blocknative.com. I'm Ryan. I think that was quicker than I expected. So I'm open to questions. We have a booth upstairs if you want to come see a demo of what we built. And I think that is it. Questions? No? Cool. Yeah. He's going to ask you to use a microphone, I think. Yeah.
So thanks for the presentation. I was just going to say that a lot of the usability issues have got to do with the way some of these fundamental primitives in the blockchain world work, like MetaMask, and it takes you have to remember those 12 words in the seed phrase, and you have to write it down, and most users are not used to stuff like that. And I think some of the usability work, for example, Austin is doing around burner wallets and meta transactions and all that stuff, they also go some way towards addressing a lot of these things. So I guess the question I have for you is that, I mean, I think of it like a walk me for Salesforce. You know, there's like a guided tool. Do you see it working more like that in terms of a stopgap arrangement that gives people a guided path? Because the fundamental usability changes have to be done at the infrastructure level for this to go anywhere. So to me, I wonder if this is more like a kind of a band-aid on top of something that's not working, because...
Yeah, band-aid, you said? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So, yeah, I think, you know, what we chose to do was to not boil the ocean from day one, right? Because as you say, like, this is a community effort to get everything really humming along. I think that what we're trying to do is we're trying to free up Dapp developers to build more functionality, to demonstrate value to users, to force them to use stuff more, to then kind of like put pressure on the other usability layers, right? So the goal here, like, yes, there has to be a lot of other stuff done in other layers to make this much more transparent, much more seamless. But I think that our focus is just making it a little bit easier for Dapp developers to just be able to push their space forward without us all having to burn cycles, kind of like spinning the wheel. And I will say this is just like our first product, so there'll be some other stuff coming down the pike that are in the same space, but not just this thing. So.
I should probably just read the docs, but how customizable is the onboarding flow? Are you able to pull out just certain steps? If I want to just use some of your components but not the entire flow, can I just rip out some pieces, or can I customize the flow of it?
You cannot customize it. I don't know if I'd love to talk later about details. I don't think you'd want to unless your Dapp already does like 1 or 2 of the steps and you wanted to do like 3 of the 3 of the other 5. So basically what'll happen right now is we will figure out what you have and what you don't have and start at what you don't have. So like we'll just kind of like when you call onboard, we will just kind of go to the place in the workflow where you're blocked, right? So there's kind of like a readiness assessment that we do internally. And it's relatively sequential, right? So like you have the right browser, then you have MetaMask, then you're authorized, and blah, 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 right? So when you call that onboard function, we just kind of like go down that pipeline, and we'll pop something up at the first point that we realize that you need help. So it's not customizable, but it might just behave well enough for your use case, but ask me later. What's your name?
Jacob, I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, okay.
Do we get any callbacks back from that onboarding flow to see if a user drops off, what step they failed at?
Yeah, actually, so that's a good point that I was supposed to say earlier, and my CEO is gonna be mad at me. But so we have this entire like analytics backend to this thing. So the whole flow is sending like an event stream back to a server. It's as anonymized as we can make it. Like we're not doing like wallet addresses and balances and things like that. But we are storing events like, you know, this user, you know, tried to do a transaction but didn't have enough ETH, right? Or this user started a transaction but then canceled it, right? And so we do have this entire kind of like analytics backend that we think is going to have a killer feature for some like larger companies. But
I was going to say, could you guys even just use that yourselves to A/B test and increase how many people get through your guys' onboarding funnel? Or is the data only to each company? Or
Yeah,
team?
yeah, we've had a lot of A/B test talks. Yeah, we could. Once we have enough traffic, we'll be doing some A/B testing. Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right. All right, everyone. I'm Ryan, Blocknative. We're up there. Use our stuff. We got a ton of bounties, bunch of money. Just use our stuff and show us how awesome it was, or show us how much it sucks, and it doesn't matter. We'll still give you money if you do it in the coolest Dapp. So check out our bounties. Thank you.